As long as you're not voting.
Good morning and welcome to the Cuyahoga County Community Development Community Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee. It's Wednesday, November 16th, and we are at the Cuyahoga County Administrative Headquarters in Committee Room A on the 4th floor. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county YouTube page. Calling the roll for Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Anderson. Ms. Anderson is absent at the moment. Mr. Benjamin.
Here.
Ms. Blackwell. Ms. Blackwell is absent. Ms. Donald. Ms. Donald is absent. Ms. Martin. Here. Mr. Nowak. Mr. Nowak is absent at the moment. Mr. Sarin. Mr. Sarin is absent at the moment. With Ms. Wheelo. Ms. Wheelo is absent at the moment. And Mr. Zone.
Present.
We don't have a quorum.
Okay, we'll continue to add members as they arrive. We have minutes to review? Yes, we do.
We do have public comment, Ms. Stevens.
Okay, and, public comments. Who has if you would call the public comments, please?
Yes. Lou?
Oh. There you go.
Good morning, everybody. You guys probably know who I am.
For the record, please say your name.
Oh, thank you. I'm Lou. 2 weeks ago, we had a Health and Human Services and Aging Committee meeting. In that particular meeting, the chair asked a question about people staying in the homeless shelter not working on housing, the percentage of it. So I'm so excited to come to this meeting today to hear the reports, which will help to clear the doubt. Lots of people, they are homeless currently, not because they don't want to work on housing, because there's no housing for them to work on. They lost the housing due to the loved ones, maybe because they became tax delinquent they did not know about, or they couldn't afford to take a small loan to do the repairing. So the accumulation put them out of the house because now the house could be considered condemned, dangerous, not fit for people to live. But at the same time, our homeless shelter have been unfit for people to live for decades, and they're not shut down. So I'm really looking forward to the information provided here to see if there's anything will be a little bit more helpful to prevent the people having housing right now, not falling into the homelessness, and also give a little light to the people in the shelter for the hope. Thank you very much.
A review of the minutes. Is there someone who would move approval of the minutes?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that reminder. Okay. Nothing that's been referred to committee. Mr. Ford, if you would begin your presentation, please.
Okay. I'm going to display this on the screen. And I just have to ask a question to go. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So this is a work in progress. As many of you know, I've been doing an annual analysis of bank lending in Cuyahoga County. It goes back 5 or 6 years. And for the first time, Cuyahoga County Council has offered to give me a contract to do this. So I'm very grateful. And the contract, I do have the contract, and I just have to send it back. So I've started the work anyway, since I do it every year. I'm about maybe 50% done with it. So what you're seeing today is not complete. It's also, because we have limited time today, I'm not even displaying everything. I'm focusing on the things that I think that would be most relevant, looking at, since the county has a contract with KeyBank, then also looking at other lenders that are in a similar situation with KeyBank in that they have made some large commitment over the last several years to improve their lending. And for the last several years, I've been looking at KeyBank along with Fifth Third and Huntington. Last year, I added US Bank, and this year I'm adding Chase Bank, and although it's not displayed on the first page, I will be adding PNC and Bank of America. All of those banks have entered into some type of community benefits agreement, often referred to as a CBA, or if not entered into an actual agreement, they've made a commitment. And these commitments tend to be multi-state and multi-billion dollar. This is separate, I should point out, from KeyBank's contract with Cuyahoga County, in which they've made 13 commitments. The agreements that I'm talking about here have multi-billion dollar commitments for actual lending to be done. And KeyBank is one of those. So what we're going to be doing in a few minutes is you'll be seeing graphs that show a comparison between these 5 banks. And again, there will be more than 5 when I get this done. But so let me, and I've also noted in bold yellow here that this is preliminary and for review only, and I'll go from there. So the first thing I wanted to include, this is not, carefully formatted, but I just thought it'd be worth noting something that I saw recently from a publication that's put out by Pew Charitable Trust that noted the gap between white and black homeownership rates is now wider than it was even in 1960. And they attribute this to 2 things, which I highlight in red in the second paragraph: the persistence of redlining, and then they note, and this is the first time that I've seen this in a large national study, the increasing number of homes being scooped up by investors. That's something that the Vacant Abandoned Property Council here in Cuyahoga County, the VAPAC group, produced a study last March and raised that. Let me go on to the next slide. So just a couple quick things about the scope of the research. Most of it's focusing on 2021 data. That's the most recent data available. Although, as I've noted with the first slide, I am going to be looking backwards at a 6-year analysis of these banks that have these agreements. There were 330,000, loan applications received by banks in Cuyahoga County, 430 lenders. And I've filtered this to 1 to 4 family homes. Did not look at multifamily, although I could, but that's a pretty small part of the data. I focused on home purchase and home repair. I did not look at refinance, although I could. And so that's something that we could talk about if you wanted something customized. I also only looked at original loan transactions, meaning that if a loan was made by KeyBank to me, and then KeyBank sold the loan to Bank of America, that sale actually shows up in this same data. That sort of skews the data. I take those subsequent transfers out, so we're only looking in this data at the original decision made by a lender. Now here are the lenders that do have these major agreements. Now the 3 at the top are ones that I've been reporting on for several years. Fifth Third, KeyBank, and Huntington all have multi-year agreements. And although some of them say only through 2021, KeyBank's and Huntington's agreements have been extended. I'm not sure about Fifth Third, whether theirs was extended, but I'll be looking at their data because they're a peer bank of KeyBank. These are all essentially peer banks with the same resources. And then the newer ones are Chase Bank made a $30 billion commitment from 2021 through 2025, so this is relatively new. Chase Bank made a $100 billion commitment 5 years starting May of 22. And then the 2 that I've shaded in a different font size, that's because they're not included yet in the data, but I'm going to, by the time I finish, that's Bank of America, 15 billion, and PNC. And Chairwoman Stevens, you asked me about PNC the other day. Truth is, I was not aware of that one, and so I will be including that one as well.
Madam Chair, just on this slide question,
Yes.
the chair to Mr. Ford.
Yeah.
Who were these CBAs negotiated with?
Very good point, and I was actually planning to mention that, and I failed to. So most of them were negotiated with the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, or NCRC, National Community Reinvestment Coalition. They're based in Washington. They've been around for maybe 20, possibly 30 years now. I think I know in the 90s, I attended my first conference that they held, so that we would be talking about 30 years. So Fifth Third, KeyBank, and Huntington were all negotiated with NCRC. Chase, I believe, was U.S. Bank. See, I'm not sure. A couple of these were not negotiated. A couple of these, the bank just on their own announced them. Although it's, this is not something I can prove, but it seems that in the last couple of years, with so much emphasis ever since the George Floyd murder and other similar events, there's been a heightened awareness, and I think more banks are moving in the direction of making some commitment to improve lending in people of color communities. So, sorry, I don't have the exact, but that's probably close. And I'd already noted, KeyBank has, of course, the separate contract with Cuyahoga County for banking services. Unlike the CBAs of these others, there isn't an overall dollar target amount for investment. KeyBank, however, did, as we know, make a commitment to use its best efforts for 13 commitments. The term of that, worth repeating again, started in April 2020 through March 31 of 2024. So it's about 2.5 years through its time frame. First thing I'm going to look at, oh yeah, please, yes.
I didn't see, that was the one you and I discussed.
Yes.
Because I'd heard something, but I.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we seeing 88 million?
That is what I saw, but keep in mind that it's only about 24 hours that I looked into this, so perhaps keep in mind the word preliminary on the front page. Yeah.
Because I have someone I'm working with in Akron
Mm-hmm.
that is an employee of Key. So he verbally said we're making a national.
Yeah. Now,
Not in relation to a.
I don't believe these,
Conversation
yeah.
wasn't about a merger.
That's uniquely different, that these large agreements in the 30, 40-year history that we've seen these, they've been in the past always due to a merger, which can be challenged under the Community Reinvestment Act. But we're seeing some of these commitments I don't think they're all related to a merger.
I'm eager to see what the
Yeah.
real details are.
And some of these are more emphasizing lending, and others broadly are looking at other types of community assistance, even economic development. So yeah, I don't have the detail on all that right now. Let's see, so I'm basically going to look at two categories here: home purchase lending with these banks over this 6-year period, 2016 through 2021, and then I'll be looking, following that, with home repair lending. So the first is Cuyahoga broadly, and I guess I should say I'm continuing the methodology that I've used over the last several years to look at 4 geographies. First is Cuyahoga County. That's not a sub-geography, that's the whole county. Then second will be Cleveland, the city. Second will be the east side of Cleveland, which is 80% African American, and the fourth, and then following that would be the east inner suburbs, which is, I believe, 52% African American. So have focused the analysis in how other housing advocates, Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition, but certainly this county contract and the work of this committee, I think, may play into that. Then at the very bottom, we've got U.S. Bank, Chase. Their movement is pretty flat. There's a little bit of an increase with Chase Bank in the last year also. I'm going to keep going, but feel free to interrupt me when you need to. So then moving to Cleveland, similar pattern, Huntington, dramatic increase in home purchase loans. The other three banks displayed here, the other four, their numbers are less and their performance is fairly flat, except again, it's worth noting, KeyBank's increase in the last year is significant, I think.
Madam Chair, on
Yeah.
this slide, Madam Chair, through to Mr. Ford, home purchase loans, this is excluding refinancing of
Yes.
existing home loans.
It's excluding refinance and excluding home repair. It's just home purchase.
Thank you.
That is correct. Then I'm going to turn to east side of Cleveland.
Another question?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Distinguishing the blues.
I may have to pick some different colors because you're right.
Remember
The shading
whether-
between the two blues is, I allowed Excel to do that and I shouldn't. I should take control
One is-
and
one
tell
is
it.
Fifth Third-
Fifth
The
Third,
darker is Fifth Third.
The purplish one is US Bank, and then
then there's
a lighter blue is Chase.
Yes, so actually we could say there are three blues.
I guess so.
Yeah. You know what? I will fix that. I will fix that going forward because especially when we're looking at it up on a screen. When you're having it right in front of you, it's a little bit better, but you're right. I'll fix it. Thank you for pointing that out. So east side of Cleveland, again, Huntington has significantly increased. The other four lenders are grouped lower in their volume, but again, KeyBank, it is noteworthy that before this last year, when we were looking at them, they were not making much upward movement. Also, it's worth noting, Chase also is right there pretty much with KeyBank. Yes, please. It is, but I guess we should think about when did that start? Since this is calendar year 2021, do you know? I don't. I think it might have been in 2021, which means we wouldn't see the effect. Right, so, but it'd be worth keeping an eye on that as we go forward.
Well, if you're inclined to do a partnership like that with CHN, then you're inclined to have more robust lending on your own. And that's the
Yeah.
whole goal of this advisory committee and the activities that I want Cuyahoga County be
Yeah.
involved in. There's pent-up demand for the kind of services these conventional lenders can provide. And we need to urge them to do more, to do better, because they will make money on this. It's not like we're asking them to do something that's un-American, or not in their own best interest. Because we can't lend that in this,
Right.
at this volume, at this need. Statistics tell us that the need for for acquisition, home repair, and managing the quality of units in our marketplace is huge. What was the deficit that OFA said we had in affordable housing? 52 or 54,000. And we know that the quality of what's out there, a substantive piece of it, is not market ready as far as I'm concerned. Director, what do you think?
100%.
Okay, moving right along.
So I may have said this before at previous meetings, but what's interesting about looking at 5, 6, and as I go forward, maybe even 7 banks together that are considered equivalent in resources and peer banks, it's interesting that if one of them can do something substantially more than the others, it does suggest, couldn't they all do that? Yeah, and although I'm reaching back 6 years here, I actually only started, I think, this comparison about 3 years ago. And before I started it, if somebody had asked me, could I predict, would somebody stand out? I don't know that I would have predicted. I just didn't know enough about Huntington or any of these banks to be able to say that. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me, and it's been consistent. And let me go forward then. So last, looking at the east inner suburbs, again, Huntington, this continual upward movement for them over the past 6 years. The other 4 banks are, certainly their production is lower, but within these lines, it's a little congested, but you'll again notice that KeyBank, although they had dipped down to whatever, that's either around 40 loans in 2020, they've jumped up in the last year in the east inner suburbs from about, looks like it might be 40 to 70. That's a significant increase. Now, of course, 2 years ago, they were at around 65. So, but still, I think it's worth noting, and especially in light of the work that this subcommittee's done over the last couple of years with KeyBank. So I'm going to shift to home repair. Oh, and one more thing. I did want to include a slide. I thought this was worth including. This is sort of a little bit out of the ordinary. It is something that I've done before in previous analyses, and I'm going to be a little egotistical and say I don't know that anybody else has ever attempted to do this. At least I've never seen it. And that's to compare the mortgage loans made in these 5 geographies to the home sales that take place. And the reason for that, if you jump all the way over to the east side of Cleveland, what really is striking is to see that there were 4,100 arm's length sale transactions, but there were only 900 mortgages. And in the note below, I suggest 2 things, which I suggested last year when I first saw this, is a high degree of investor activity, which is borne out, I think, not only by the VAPAC study that was produced in March, but also other national research that suggests this. And that second thing is that that's a missed opportunity for affordable homeownership as these investors are grabbing these properties. They're buying properties that could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 homes that might be in decent shape, but because the market is depressed still on the east side, that's an opportunity for investors. Meanwhile, home buyers are trying to get a mortgage. Could take them 6 to 8 weeks to do that, and the investors are paying cash. So, yeah. Sure.
We have this orangey color. What is that?
That's the 1 to 3 family sales that took place in that geography.
And then the green?
The green is the mortgages that were issued in that same geography. There's a slight, worth pointing out, the home sales are on 1 to 3 family. The mortgages, because of the way the home mortgage disclosure data comes, it's 1 to 4 family. But I have a note there saying that 99% of all transactions in Cuyahoga County are 1 to 2 family. So the difference between the 3 and 4 family is statistically insignificant. It is an apples to apples comparison, even though it might not appear that on the surface.
So the investors come with their cash.
Or
Our properties, don't rehab them. They put some lipstick on the front door and rent them. So we have larger numbers of houses in need of investment and repair. So do they just keep turning these units over? And that they bring people in, people don't want to pay them because they're not in great shape, and they evict.
So it's not a lease.
Can I get you to hit the microphone? The green light needs to come on.
Yes, it's a chronic problem. So investors come in, they buy the properties for cash. They do very little to nothing to improve them. They rent them out for high rents. And then the tenant has very little protection because typically they don't offer a lease. It's a month-to-month situation, often doing self-help evictions and tossing them out. Or if it's property management companies, some of them are compensated for each eviction. So there's an incentive there built in their contract to evict.
the reason I include this slide is it just demonstrates why there's a need for access to mortgage lending, home purchase lending, particularly on the east side of Cleveland. Certainly, there's a need everywhere, but the east side of Cleveland, for this very reason, is demonstrated by this chart.
So there are affordable units out there based on this chart. We're just not seeing enough cash available to the average resident for them to buy more of these themselves. Is that corollary?
Access to loans to be able to purchase them. Yeah. They can't compete with the investors who have the cash.
So let's flip back for a minute. How many loans? Let's look at, oh, you don't break it down
Do you want me
the
to?
same way. We see whether there were actually, did our lenders do
Well,
those
we could.
914 loans?
We can look at these.
predominantly?
The east side of Cleveland, the loans. I mean, of course, keep in mind this is 5 lenders, not all lenders who made. I do have in this research. I do have that information for other lenders. I just don't have it.
So for the 5 we picked?
Yes,
How many of those 914?
so Huntington did 91,
They did
and
10%?
Key Bank did 30, and the others did, what was Chase did 25, Fifth Third did 16, U.S. Bank did 13. So Huntington did 3 times as many of these loans on the east side of Cleveland as the other lenders represented on this chart.
And what share of the market do these folks have? Do they represent 50% of the market?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm looking to see, do I have with me, excuse me, some of the
Well, I was
past
just going to say,
research.
based on Frank's research, 430 lenders made loans in this time span in that calendar year. We're only looking at 5 of those
That's right.
430 lenders.
430 received applications. I will say, and I can do this from memory, the largest volume lender on the east side is Cross Country Mortgage. I think Huntington's 91 is up there as either second or third in the list, looking at all lenders who made loans on the east side.
Is just simply a mortgage lender.
That's right. Yeah, I don't believe they're a depository institution. Yeah, right. And I think that, this is from memory, but I think that Cross Country's numbers, were probably a little over 100. And I'm pretty sure that, again, Huntington is either second or third on the list with their 91.
And is Cross Country behaving with our constituents in a proactive way? Do they have interest rates that are reasonable, meaning a range for them?
And
some protections?
there are 2 things that I have not looked at, but I intend to look at. There'll be something added that I've not done before. One is, because I was concerned about this, seeing them at the top, are they making subprime loans, high-cost, high-interest loans? That'd be one. The second would be, what's the experience over the last several years of their loans being foreclosed on? And so I've actually asked, working with Case Western Reserve, to get some customized data on that. I don't have it yet.
Let's take a look outside the standard, folks, because one of the profile lenders said to me, "Are you going to beat up on me?" I'm like, "No, I just am asking questions. We want to learn. We also want to see if there's ways for the standard lenders to be more proactive. But if we've got somebody who is doing 10% of the business on the east side, then we need to take a look at how they operate and give some guidance."
A really good point. Yes.
I don't see that as outside of our purview.
Yeah.
We're a public entity. We can ask anybody questions that operates in the marketplace. They don't always have to answer,
Right.
but we can ask.
Do you want me to go to home repair? I think so. We looked at this. So next is home repair. Again, the same 6-year time period. So this is a little bit different here. So I'll point out something I pointed out probably last year when I presented this information. The first thing to note is that KeyBank 6 years ago was far and away the highest volume home repair lender. Nobody was even close to them. Then what's happened over time is that, of course, Huntington has increased, as they have with their home purchase lending. KeyBank declined, but again, I'll point out once more that look at the last year. Just in the last year, KeyBank has now increased their home repair lending. They're not at the level that they were once. They're not at the level yet of what Huntington is at, but I think they have to be given credit for the fact that in the last year, they went from 270 to 340, and I still think that is probably attributable to some degree to the work of this subcommittee and the partnership with KeyBank. The other three banks, you know, if I haven't said this already, I think I may have said it a year ago, but I'll repeat it, that all of these banks are in this chart and in this analysis because they've all made multi-billion-dollar commitments that they're going to do better. And I have to say it's disappointing to see the ones grouped at the bottom, that you would expect something more from them over a 6-year period while they've made these commitments. Now, in the case of, I can't remember, I have to go back. Chase's commitment might just be only a year old, but the other banks I think have made, certainly Fifth Third and KeyBank have made these commitments going back to 2016. Let's go on to the City of Cleveland. Now, City of Cleveland is, oh, sorry, hit the wrong button. There we go. City of Cleveland. Now here we'll see that what's happening is that Huntington and KeyBank are actually very close. KeyBank did drop, but again, once again, notice that they are coming up in the last year, and their rate of lending in the City of Cleveland for home repair is pretty much now on par with Huntington. The other three banks are down at the bottom with, I mean, literally in the single digits in some cases, or 10, 15 loans. Let me go to the east side of Cleveland. And the east side of Cleveland also is interesting because now we see KeyBank in the last year has now made more loans, home repair loans, than Huntington, which I don't know why. It may be worth having a conversation with Huntington. Why did Huntington start out the first 3 years with the same pattern they've had before with a significant increase, but then they sort of dropped off in the last 3 years? They're still, both Huntington and KeyBank are still producing more home repair loans than, again, looking at the three at the bottom, we're literally talking in the single digits. 1, 2, 0 loans in 2021 for Chase, US Bank, and Fifth Third. Well, then there's, yes, if you add them together. I'm going to go to the east inner suburbs now. Again, we have, generally speaking, Huntington increased while KeyBank decreased, except for the last year. A very significant increase, probably of the different things I've shown here. This is probably the most significant increase for KeyBank in the east inner suburbs, going from 47 home repair loans to 79. This is before, this would, it's okay. We should note, this does not yet reflect KeyBank's commitment to expand the Challenge Home Repair Loan Fund, which they're calling the Key Cares Home. So that's not going to show up until 2022. So this is on their own, again, with some nudging, I believe, by housing advocates and this working group. So, you know, I've been pretty blunt about what I see with KeyBank before, but I think we should all be acknowledging anything that they've done to improve, and what we should do is be encouraging them to continue that trend. So I think that might be, okay, the only thing I have here at the end And I just put it in for reference. This is not updated. This does not have the latest data. But if you wanted to see those 50,000 loans and less, that's if you want to take time to, we've looked at this before. So the subcommittee has seen this. It's up to you if you want to take some time, or do we want to move to looking at the recommendations to the council?
Look at the recommendations.
All right.
Thank you for giving us this,
Sure.
this overview. I can't say enough to those watching online through streaming service how it is important to keep this in the public's mind, that lenders have commitments they should make to undertake work in our marketplace, and that our voices help them continue to do that activity.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can you speak into your microphone for
This
the live
report
stream?
is of
Thank you.
significance to us because it reminds people to stay on top of these issues.
And it's about 50% done. I expect the full report to be done by the end of the year.
Okay.
And my plan is to repeat what I've done before, with the exception of things that this subcommittee may say, can you look at this? Can you look at that?
So staff and I will talk with
Yeah.
you
Okay.
about some of the things we may want to see
All right.
slightly different in the report.
Is
But
it,
I want us to, as the county, to be able to play a role in how we encourage the lenders to do more in our marketplace.
is it possible to screen the other document up there?
I believe we can. Yep, it looks like we can. Just give us a minute. Which document are, oh, yes, you've taken us to the draft one.
Right. This is
Okay,
the
recommendations.
this is the document that this subcommittee would submit to county council with recommendations. This version, it's a clean version that does not show track changes, but I did make some amendments in the last 24 hours, which I'm going to point out to you where they are.
Okay.
And I can get you the track changes. In fact, I think staff actually has the track changes if you want it. The changes reflect two things. They're in light of two things. One, that KeyBank has, as I've just noted, made some improvement in the last year, which was not reflected in the earlier draft of this. And the second thing is that KeyBank has now, I think in October, just a month ago, announced that they are going to expand, technically speaking, they said they would expand the Challenge Loan Fund. They're not really expanding that. They're expanding something similar, which is worth noting. But should I just go through the document?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the first paragraph is really no significant change. The concerns, can I scroll down with this, or can?
No, I'm doing.
Yeah, scroll down so we see the concerns part. And it's fine if you zoom in. Yeah, those two paragraphs are sort of in tandem, worth looking at together. So most of the first bulleted paragraph is new. The first sentence is the same, but then, well, I'll just read it out loud. So I point out that after more than a 2.5-year delay, now that, it may be too strong if you don't want to say that, but it's not only that you entered into this contract 2.5 years ago and KeyBank then announced what they said they were going to do, but I should point out that it was in 2017, 3 years earlier, that the Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition and other housing advocates first asked KeyBank and gave them a proposal to expand the Challenge Loan Fund. The commitment that was stated in the banking services agreement, word for word, it was presented to KeyBank in 2017. So it's not just 2.5 years later, it's literally 5 years later. But that's me editorializing. This subcommittee may want to not say that. But here's the substance of it. This is welcome news. But there are two concerns that I think the subcommittee might want to point out to County Council. And they are that while KeyBank is agreeing and has announced a program, they're leaving out two of the important elements that were in the challenge program. One, there will be no final inspection by the Home Repair Resource Center, who manages the program, to ensure that the repairs were done properly. That's been a fundamental part of the challenge loan program for 40 years. And I'd say it's pretty important. Second is that in the past, the Home Repair Resource Center was always notified if one of the KeyBank borrowers fell behind on payments, because then what they would do is they would reach out to that family and say, can we help you? Can we help you get with budget financial counseling? Can we assist you to get back on track? They won't be notified of that. I just think it's worth pointing out that while KeyBank is doing something we've been asking them to do, they've left out two of the key critical elements. Let's go down to the second bullet, which is home repair related, so it's similar. If you could scan down just a little more. So while it appears KeyBank may soon participate, or that actually should, that's an oversight. As I was editing this literally last night, I think that should say, while it appears that KeyBank is going to participate, not may soon, in a home repair loan program with features similar to the Challenge Home Repair Program, there are concerns whether the program will be sufficient to reverse KeyBank's decline in home repair lending over the past 6 years. I cite some specific data, which does include 2021, and I note that one of their peer banks has increased significantly more in the same period. KeyBank's home repair lending in areas of greatest need, east side of Cleveland and east center suburbs, has also declined. Then I note, on a positive note, KeyBank's home repair lending did show a noticeable increase last year, 2021, the first full year of KeyBank's partnership with Cuyahoga County. The recommendations outlined below will help ensure KeyBank's continual movement in this direction. This is, by the way, previously, whenever I presented something, it was usually reviewed by the working group that this subcommittee had established. Because this was done in the last 24 hours, the working group, so nobody has seen this. You're seeing it for the first time, and so this group and staff should certainly feel free to make edits. Could we scroll down? Actually, the third bullet is identical, has not changed. The fourth bullet, a table tracking, that has not changed. The last bullet, the only change there is instead of saying a 5-year study, it says a 6-year study, which now says currently underway. And then, so what is added in that last, if you could scroll up just slightly to capture that last bullet, noting that KeyBank's loan production remains low either in relation to its peer lenders in the market or in relation to its own performance. Now that's, of course, already acknowledging that in the very last year, KeyBank is showing improvement. But overall, in the 6-year period, we can't really ignore that KeyBank's overall performance is still below both what it had been and in comparison to its peers. The recommendations are, I believe there's no change to the recommendations that you last saw, which would have been when we last met and when they were last emailed to people, which might be a couple months ago. But we can walk through them, and we actually probably should, since this is. Let me read them then. Number one, subcommittee recommends that the table in attachment A be employed to assess KeyBank's performance. This is the document we've referred to as the metrics, which these target goals would help the county assess the extent to which community credit needs are being met. Recommendation number two, while progress on some of KeyBank's community commitments can be ascertained from data that is publicly available, the data that I've shown you, other KeyBank commitments involve data that must be provided by KeyBank. I think we've talked about this before, that some of the commitments KeyBank made of the 13 cannot be tracked or monitored from the data that's available from the federal government. The only way to do that is to ask KeyBank for the data. So this bullet says, we recommend that council ask KeyBank to disclose additional data needed to adequately assess KeyBank's performance. And there is another attachment, attachment C, which provides the suggested requests for additional data. Recommendation 3, oh yeah, please. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering, Frank, if maybe you should also put in when you would want to receive that data.
Good
you
point.
know, as opposed to just, because they're going to push it off to the late fall or
Yeah.
the end of the year.
Yes, no, that's an excellent point. Oh, you know, I guess, so we have maybe thinking about, this gets presented to council. Council then, if they agree, they say, yes, send the request to KeyBank. 30 days after it gets sent? Well, I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. I would say it should be readily available to them. It's not like something they would have to dig really deep to find the answer to. I would imagine that they should be able to find the answer within 30 days. But I don't know that I'd go beyond 60. 30 might be reasonable. And anyone else on the subcommittee that, you know, my opinion might be no better than anybody else's on this point. So again, it will come down to when does the county council actually authorize sending something. The third recommendation is pointing out that the data, the next year's data, home mortgage disclosure data for 2022 does become available for individual lenders in March of 23. It doesn't become available aggregate for all 400 lenders till like August or September. That's what I've been working with. But it is available for the individual lenders. That means that KeyBank would be in a position to provide, well, I should stick with reading. We recommend the county arrange for an analysis of KeyBank lending in 22 and an analysis of some KeyBank's peer lenders. We also recommend that at the close of 22, the county ask KeyBank to disclose the same data referenced in recommendation number 2 above if KeyBank has not made significant progress toward the attachment A goals in calendar year 22. The subcommittee recommends that in March of 23, County Council begin exploring alternative banking arrangements for when the banking services contract expires in March of 24. This is not new. This is something that you've seen before. I'm going to keep going and just, unless you let me know when you want to stop. Recommendation 4, in October 21, KeyBank submitted a report on its National Community Benefits Plan and on progress related to the 13 community commitments, Cuyahoga commitments. The subcommittee recommends that Council submit questions to KeyBank requesting further clarification on that report. Proposed questions for Council's consideration are attached as attachment D. That's also something, nothing new. That's may have seen that months ago. There is, this isn't new either, but at least it was new as of about 2 months ago when you last saw this document, that the Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition has come up with a couple recommendations which I included for your consideration. Number 5 says, over the past decades, many banks have closed branches, particularly in communities with high minority populations. A 2022 study published by the National Community Reinvestment Coalition found the Cleveland metro area experienced a net loss of 10% of its bank branches during the period 2017 through 21. To ensure that all citizens of Cuyahoga County have fair access to banking services, we recommend that County Council submit the following requests to KeyBank. Number 1, disclose the location of KeyBank branches closed and opened in the past 5 years. 2, disclose any current plans to close a branch in Cuyahoga County. 3, commit to giving 120 days advance notice of any branch closing. And 4, disclose KeyBank's policy on branch closings that was adopted pursuant to Section 42 of the Federal Deposit Insurance Act. In other words, they are required to adopt that policy referenced in number 4. Then there's a link to the study that was done by NCRC. Number 6, the last one, the ultimate impact of many of these 13 commitments, particularly those involving new or expanded programs, which specifically would include the Challenge Loan Program, although this should now say actually the Key Community Cares Loan Program, that should be amended, will depend upon the extent to which resources are committed to market and promote these programs. We recommend the County Council ask KeyBank to detail the marketing plans for these programs over the next 2 years and the resources that will be allocated to aggressively promote the programs. Again, those are actually, these are not new. They're new, maybe not 6 months ago, but they are new. They're not new from a couple months ago when you last saw this document.
No, there's no one online.
I have a question, and I see Paul Hurdick here, so it might be for Paul or Sarah. The normal KeyBank programs that you offer, the Help Loan and the Heritage Loan, Paul, has there been any change to those programs?
Here, Paul.
Schooled by staff, I need to speak into a microphone.
Sure.
So,
No, here you go.
Frank, if you don't mind.
Oh, no.
Thank you. Paul Hurdig, Department of Development, Director Martin, Chair Stevens. We've not changed the agreement under which these programs have operated for many years. We continue to hope there would be other banks involved. KeyBank has been the bank that has stuck with us through this time, although we're hopeful with interest rates ticking up again, there may be renewed interest. You know, probably more than you asked, but one of the reasons other banks fell out was that nobody was making any money on it. In fact, they were losing money. But we're hopeful now they can offer a true 3% buy down on our deposits. We may get some other banks back. But no, we've not changed the rules of the program recently.
Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to say, I think that your comments that our subcommittee work is working
Mr. Benjamin, can you turn on your mic, please?
is good. I think it is on.
Oh,
There
thank
we
you.
go. Your comments that the subcommittee work and the advocacy work seems to be working is good. My own goal, what I'd like to see happen is that all the banks that work with municipal governments make it a part of their normal business practice to come in and make commitments up front like this in order to get our business. And I think, you know, expanding this to the 7 banks is a great step.
I agree.
Was there, since we have Mr. Hurdig at the microphone, were there any other questions for him? All right, thank you. We're at our hour.
Can I just add one thing?
Certainly.
The question about the help loan is relevant because the reason that it's recommended that County Council ask KeyBank for some additional information beyond what's in this federally available data, the help loan program is a perfect example. You can't go to the HMDA data and find out what help loans did they make. They have to tell us that. So that's a really good example of why you want to ask for some additional information. So.
Okay. I want to thank you for the presentation. We have a little homework to do as staff so that I can get this to the full council. But we have one more item of business under miscellaneous business, what I would like to bring to this committee. We don't have a quorum, so we can't vote. I will be asking then staff to help me make calls to each of the members. But as you heard me say, I'd like for us to begin a dialogue about all of the significant lenders and maybe to look at these folks who do significant mortgage lending only, to continue the dialogue we have, just take it in a different direction beginning in 2023. Mr. Sound.
First of all, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think that's an excellent suggestion. And I would also recommend, like we have with other lenders, let's invite Cross Country in to come do a presentation. Their corporate offices for Cuyahoga County is 1 block south of where we're sitting right now. They're on East 9th and Bolivar. They can just walk right over and let's hear what they're up to, what they're doing, and make them aware of this working group.
Okay.
Yeah, good idea.
All right, I'm going to take this back to my colleagues on County Council and see if we can be authorized to have more conversations with lenders across this marketplace.
I have one other miscellaneous. item, if
Okay.
it'd be okay. I just want to let this committee and the county council be aware, as many in this room know, that the Western Reserve Land Conservancy in the past have done property inventories throughout the county, in exurban areas as well as the city of Cleveland. We did a full property inventory in 2015. We refined some data and did a property survey in 4 southeast neighborhoods in 2018. And when Director Martin joined the Bibb administration, it was a priority of hers that she wanted to make sure that she had real up-to-date photos and a snapshot of the housing condition in the city. So the Western Reserve Land Conservancy began that work last month. I'll let Director Martin comment on this activity, but I wanted this council to be aware because, you know, Cleveland is a significant portion of the county. We're doing it in the city. We have requests from a few suburbs in the county for us to do this work that we're contemplating maybe doing it in 2023. But it will give Director Martin and her colleagues at the city an opportunity to develop strategies and deploy resources based on the data that they receive. So I just want to shout out to Director Martin for her proactive nature. And Director, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're very pleased to be working with Western Reserve Land Conservancy again. And big shout out to our funders, Rocket Community Fund, LISC, and the Cleveland Foundation for making it happen. We are using our own staff to do the survey, which is unique and challenging at the same time. We're always looking for additional people to help with the survey, so boy, we'll take volunteers. But the goal is to triage all of the stock, all of the residential properties, all the commercial properties, and know what is our level of vacancy, what is our level of absolute distress, and create a lead risk score for many of these properties. So the Bibb administration is heavily focused on curing the lead poisoning problem, and this is a tool for that, as well as deploying ARPA funds, which we know are very much needed for home repair, for gap financing, and for developer acquisition rehab, which has been proposed to City Council. So this gives us the data to back up the need, and we hope we get it done before the snow gets too awful, but we'll see. It might continue into the spring.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
just a couple other items that I think might be of interest. So there's a little under 170,000 parcels in the city of Cleveland. We're looking not only at residential structures, but commercial, industrial, vacant lots. We're also looking at, and there's about 50 questions on each property, condition of sidewalk pavement, you know, down trees, hazardous dumping. There's a whole host of questions that'll come in there. So there'll be a lot of good data for the city then to crunch and deploy the appropriate resources to tackle this matter.
So let me ask a couple of questions of the two of you, if I might. This study will reside in building and housing,
Correct.
and so I'll be able to call you and ask you questions about things that I'm concerned about, like how many of the units in the city that are residential, the residential subset, are in what condition and lead safe.
Yes.
That's the future goal.
That's the future goal. That's the near-term goal when the survey is completed. We should have good
Yeah,
information.
And in addition to that, Chairwoman and Director Martin, we're hoping to upload all this data to NST so it can be available to all the community development
Oh,
corporations and everyone, so they'll have access to this
I
info
haven't
as well.
played on that in like 5 years.
It's fun. The challenge, of course, is going to be the 49 questions. That's never been done before, but we wanted to take a broader look at infrastructure issues too. What are the sidewalks like? What are the curbs like? What are the
Did you
roads
say
like?
you were using staff exclusively from the city of Cleveland?
Yes.
So your inspectors are doing this?
Yes, it's actually a very heavy lift. We've had to pull about 25 people off of their normal job to do the survey, but it's that high of a priority that we're willing to do that.
Well, it creates your base of data,
Well,
Yes.
and if I
and
could
it
give a
helps you
shout out
become
again to
more
the, well, this,
capable of targeting what
and
you're
this
doing.
goes to the way that Director Martin thinks about this. She wants to get away from a complaint-driven system. You know, the way it is now, it's punitive. Complaints are filed, city goes out and enforces it. Now she can do a very objective review of all of the parcels over a period of time, which will probably, we won't wrap this up hopefully until probably April of next year. But then she'll have some good data, and then she can be proactive on how she deploys inspectors, how she deploys resources, as opposed to being reactive and punitive.
Wow, you're going to be progressive? What a shock. Anything from anyone else? Have I forgotten anything, staff? I want to thank you all for coming out. We didn't make quorum, so we don't have an official vote. So I will use my authority as chair of the advisory committee to make a request and a recommendation to the full council. I think this is a labor of love that we entered into. Investment in this county in core pieces of it is incredibly important if we want the quality of life of this county to increase. And that's what I want to see. I'd love to see that we were an outlier in Ohio and that our median income was higher than the state's median income, that the quality of our housing stock was increasing, and that people who wanted to become homeowners in our marketplace could easily find ways to either acquire and or to obtain financing to improve the quality of the units they own. So thank you for being willing to be on this journey with me, and hopefully we can continue to encourage lenders in this marketplace to do more for our constituents. If there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.